Poland has announced the complete shutdown of its border with Belarus, a decision that signals one of the most dramatic shifts on NATO's eastern frontier. As the clock struck midnight on September 12, every land crossing between the two countries was sealed indefinitely. On the Belarusian side, roads filled with endless lines of cars and freight trucks, their engines idling in the cold air, horns blaring, passengers staring silently at the motionless gates. Soldiers patrol both sides, floodlights illuminating the night as confusion turns to panic. Poland insists this is not an act of retaliation but a purely defensive step taken in response to recent security threats. The decision follows the Zapad 2025 joint military exercises and the confirmed downing of several Russian reconnaissance drones that entered Polish airspace through Belarus. In parallel, Lithuania and Estonia imposed partial airspace restrictions, while NATO increased its early warning and aerial patrol operations along the eastern flank. What began as a limited precaution quickly evolved into a full-scale closure. Footage taken at dawn shows miles of vehicles, passenger cars, cargo trucks, even trains frozen on the asphalt. Drivers shout questions at border guards, children sleep in the back seats, and people rush to cross before the last window of opportunity closes. This is not merely a border incident, it is a disruption of everyday life, trade, and stability for tens of thousands of people. And there are three primary victims of this closure: ordinary Belarusians, the government in Minsk, and Moscow itself. Two major developments forced Warsaw's hand in recent days. The first was the repeated appearance of Russian-made drones in Polish airspace, prompting an immediate military response. Polish F-16s and Dutch F-35s scrambled into action, supported by NATO early warning aircraft based in Italy and multinational refueling planes. Patriot missile batteries stationed in Germany were placed on high alert. According to official reports, the unidentified drones were intercepted and destroyed. Though the precise weapons used were not revealed, experts suggest the engagement involved AIM-120 air-to-air missiles, part of standard NATO loadouts. Civilian flights were briefly suspended, and several airports temporarily closed as a precaution. The intensity of this operation demonstrated that the alliance's eastern defenses are not just symbolic, they are active, coordinated, and ready. The second development was Poland's immediate decision to reinforce its eastern border militarily. Within hours, tens of thousands of soldiers, armored units, and border guards were deployed. Official numbers were not fully disclosed, but Polish and regional media estimated more than 40,000 security personnel are now positioned along the border. This move is part of the so-called Eastern Shield project, a long-term defensive system designed to prevent illegal crossings, infiltration, and smuggling while ensuring rapid military response capability. Observation towers, trenches, radars, and sensor networks have been added, turning the once porous border into a fortified line. The human consequences were immediate. Thousands who used to cross the border daily for work, trade, or family visits suddenly found themselves trapped. When news of the closure spread, people rushed to pack belongings, hoping to make it across before midnight. But many were too late. By dawn, queues stretched for kilometers. Belarusian media showed families sleeping in their cars, exhausted children wrapped in blankets, and drivers shouting questions at distant guards. For them, this wasn't about politics, it was about survival. The economic cost is enormous. Belarus relies heavily on land routes through Poland to access the European market. It exports fertilizer, fuel, and agricultural products and imports food, medicine, spare parts, and electronics from EU countries. With borders closed, supply chains break. Trucks must detour through Russia, doubling distances and costs. Insurance rates rise, fuel becomes scarce, and delivery schedules collapse. In recent months, Russia's domestic fuel market has already been volatile, suffering from refinery fires and export restrictions, creating additional strain on Belarusian transport companies. Within the first day of closure, Polish and Belarusian reports indicated hundreds of trucks and over 1,000 passenger cars jammed along the border, clogging nearby city traffic. Even Belarusian state channels, usually silent on sensitive issues, acknowledged the chaos. But beyond the traffic jams lies a deeper problem: uncertainty. No one knows how long the border will remain shut. Daily life grinds to a halt. Medical appointments are missed, job contracts postponed, school enrollments delayed. Financial transactions slow down, international transfers are disrupted, and imported goods vanish from store shelves. The question echoing across Belarusian homes is simple: when will the border reopen? But no one can answer. The lack of clarity spreads fear. People begin hoarding supplies, filling up their cars with fuel, buying extra food, and stocking cash. Even without real shortages, the perception of scarcity pushes prices up. Some Belarusians, desperate for stability, consider leaving the country altogether, some through legal visas, others through illegal crossings. Since 2021, attempts at irregular migration through Belarus into the EU have surged, and the closure will only redirect, not stop, these movements. The routes will become longer, more dangerous, and more expensive. Geography now dictates politics. With the door to the west closed, Belarus is forced to turn eastward. Dependence on Russia grows deeper. Payments shift to ruble-based systems, limiting access to foreign currency and increasing exposure to inflation. Transport costs rise, while wages stagnate. The result is simple: the Belarusian consumer pays more, earns less, and feels more trapped than ever. For Poland, deploying 40,000 troops to the frontier serves three objectives. First, to maintain full surveillance and rapid response readiness across the border. Second, to deter illegal crossings and smuggling through a combination of physical barriers, sensor systems, and immediate legal processing for returns. Third, to demonstrate military symmetry and deterrence against any troop concentrations or exercises on the Belarusian side, particularly during Zapad-type maneuvers. The Eastern Shield concept supports this by adding permanent structures, observation posts, reinforced roads, trenches, and long-range surveillance. In essence, Poland is sending a message to its citizens, NATO allies, and Moscow that it is prepared for escalation but acting within defensive boundaries. Inside Belarus, the closure reawakens memories of repression. Many still remember the police violence and mass arrests that followed the 20 million to 100 to 1,021 protests. Now the indefinite border shutdown revives that old fear of isolation. The psychological toll is heavy. For years, Belarusians have relied on cross-border travel for trade, shopping, or simply a breath of freedom. People bought cheaper goods in Poland, refueled their cars, or visited family in nearby EU towns. Suddenly, that simple routine is gone. Supermarkets begin running out of imported products, local substitutes become more expensive. Pharmacies face delays in medicine deliveries. Schools struggle with exchange programs and international tests. The economy, already fragile under sanctions, bends further. Wages remain low, savings disappear, and household budgets collapse under the new pressure. For President Lukashenko's administration, this crisis is both economic and political. Closing the border adds to internal tension and raises the cost of maintaining control. With the economy increasingly tied to Moscow, dependence on Russian aid deepens, but so does resentment among citizens. For the Kremlin, Poland's decision undercuts its influence. The Belarusian border has long been a pressure point used to test Europe's reaction or provoke chaos through controlled migration flows. Now, that lever weakens. Moreover, NATO's rapid joint response, from drone interceptions to troop deployment, demonstrates that the alliance's red lines are firmer than Moscow expected. At the same time, as Belarus grows weaker, its financial demands on Russia increase, placing an additional burden on the Kremlin's strained budget. Official Russian statements denounce Poland's actions as provocative, yet the ground reality reveals a new balance. Europe's defenses now act faster than its adversaries. Inside NATO, Warsaw handles the situation carefully, balancing national action with alliance coordination. The border decision remains a sovereign move, but every military step is shared and discussed with allies in Berlin, The Hague, Rome, and Brussels. The Polish president's approval of expanded NATO presence in Poland further solidifies this unity. Even though Warsaw calls the border closure temporary, historical precedent shows that such measures rarely ease quickly. Combined with Lithuania and Estonia's partial airspace restrictions, the closure may create a lasting new regime across the EU's eastern border, a political, economic, and psychological wall that could endure for months. As time passes, several possible scenarios emerge. The first, the border remains closed, humanitarian exceptions continue, and Belarus stabilizes through subsidies and strict price controls. Trade slows but doesn't collapse. The second, further drone incursions occur, prompting harsher NATO responses and deeper militarization. The sense of entrapment among Belarusians grows stronger. The third, Minsk begins quiet diplomatic talks with European capitals, requesting limited humanitarian or commercial corridors in exchange for cooperation on migration management, moves that may anger Moscow. Whatever the scenario, one thing is certain: The indefinite closure of Poland's border with Belarus marks a turning point in regional geopolitics. For NATO, it proves unity and readiness. For Russia, it reveals limits. For Belarus, it brings deeper isolation and economic strain. And for ordinary people waiting at the gates, families separated, drivers out of work, students cut off from Europe, it means longer routes, higher prices, and a growing sense of being locked in. The border that once connected two worlds has become a line dividing them. There are no clear winners here, only the silent losers stuck between politics and geography. So, what do you think about this issue? Please share your thoughts in the comments. To stay updated on new videos, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Thank you for watching.